we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Melissa Barnett. I'm the director of the Frances McClelland Institute for Children, Youth, and Families, or FMI as we call ourselves. We're so glad you could join us for the Spring 2021 Student Poster Colloquium. And this is the second time we've done this virtually. And I think this is one of the few events at the U of A that really brings together undergraduate and graduate researchers. And it's a great opportunity to learn about all the work that's been going on all year. And here's a chance to highlight that work. Before we get started today, I do want to, although everyone is joining us virtually, I do want to acknowledge where our institution, the University of Arizona, is. And take a moment to think about what that means in terms of our history and our responsibility. So we honor the tribal nations who have served as stewards of this land since time immemorial. We respectfully acknowledge the ancestral homelands of the Tohono O'odham Nation, and we recognize the Pasquayaqui tribe who reside within the Tucson community. We are committed to recognizing, acknowledging, and valuing Indigenous peoples and their culture, history, oppression, resilience, and contributions to our communities in Southern Arizona and beyond. So here at the Frances McClelland Institute, our goal is really to move beyond the university walls to work collaboratively to build strong communities that promote family resilience so that children and families from marginalized backgrounds have the opportunity to thrive. We do this by supporting innovative research, some of which you'll hear about today, actively partnering with community organizations, sharing research findings with practitioners and the community, and what's most in the spotlight today, educating the next generation of engaged scholars and leaders. All of the work that we do here at FMI is really inspired by Frances McClelland, who lived a life that demonstrated, celebrated, and facilitated resilience. Frances overcame many obstacles and challenges in her own life. She was very generous, and she was a strong believer in the power of research to improve individuals' lives. So as I said before, this is kind of a unique event in that we're bringing together undergraduate and graduate researchers. We have three different groups presenting today. The first group will be undergraduate students in the Norton School who will be presenting their independent study or work they've been doing in a research lab or as part of their honors thesis work. We will then move on to have a few presentations from graduate students in family studies and human development. And our final group of presentations will come from family studies and human development undergraduate class, FSHD 408. And you'll hear a little bit more about the scope of their projects as we move through the program. Each presenter will present for about 5 minutes, and then we'll take about 2 to 3 minutes for questions and answers immediately following each presentation. We ask that you please use the Q&A function or raise your hand, and we will call on you to ask your questions of the presenters. And we ask for the rest of the presentation panel, if you're not presenting, if you could please keep yourselves on mute so that we can maximize our ability to hear the group or individual who is presenting. And so I'm thrilled to introduce our first presenter here, Azraela Friedman, who's here to present her work that she did under the mentorship of Dr. Catherine Spears.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barnett. Hi, everyone. My name is Azraela Friedman. I am a senior and a FSHD in psychology major. Part of my research with Dr. Spears over this past semester has focused on understanding how the COVID-19 pandemic altered programming and resources that cooperative extensions were able to provide to early childhood education teachers and providers. So to give a brief definition about what a cooperative extension system is, they are found in every state and they serve as an outreach arm for land-grant universities, just like the University of Arizona. Cooperative extension systems provide programming and other educational services for the communities that they are a part of. And they cover many areas of programming. However, our research today specifically is focused on the field of family and consumer sciences. Oftentimes, cooperative extensions have in-person workshops for the community that they serve. However, due to COVID-19, the ability to have these in-person events became almost impossible. Our data collection began with creating an online survey that was divided into 3 main sections. However, this presentation focuses specifically on the COVID-19 portion of our survey. So we began data collection on March 22nd of 2021, and it's still ongoing. We requested surveys from faculty at 88 cooperative extensions in the United States, Washington, DC, and in 6 territories. This is just a subsample of our data as we are still in the data collection process. So with that being said, this research sample involving COVID-19 includes 26 cooperative extensions, with 10 of those reporting that they did not provide programming or services for young children in early childhood education settings or for early childhood education teachers. So the charts on the screen are representing the 16 cooperative extensions, which were 69% of our subsample, that reported that they provide these types of programming or services. While this is just preliminary data and a very small sample of a much larger data set, it highlights the many ways that cooperative extensions did in fact alter their programming and the resources in response to the pandemic. While it may be expected to see shifts to online programming, the classes that they offered, and the ways that information was shared with early childhood education teachers, this data also emphasizes the specific types of changes that were made in response to COVID and how those changes were decided upon. So the first chart on the top left looks at how the COVID-19 pandemic changed the programming that cooperative extensions offered. As expected, a large percent, 81% of this sample, moved their programming and trainings online. In making these decisions to go online, we also found that most cooperative extensions consulted with organizations and agencies to make these decisions. The chart on the top right represents how some cooperative extensions informally talked with state or local government representatives, as well as talking with their own cooperative extension faculty and staff. In mainly consulting with government officials, it's possible that these cooperative extensions might have missed out on valuable perspectives by not talking to the individual families in the community. The bottom 2 charts represent the data related to how cooperative extensions disseminated information during the pandemic, along with the specific types of programming that they offered. We found 80% of extensions used their web, email, information with early childhood educators during this pandemic. These charts also show that while these online resources were typically used to disseminate the information, cooperative extensions also provided mainly online, whether that was through fact sheets, newsletters, or instructional videos. It was interesting for us to see that 31% of the sample, so 5 cooperative extensions total, actually reported that they held in-person programming. We are planning to look into this in a little bit more detail. So in terms of future research, I think that there are many opportunities to continue to look at this data, possibly reassess how the COVID-19 pandemic changed programming in ways that might have actually been beneficial despite the negative circumstances. Some questions that may be explored is seeing how these changes will last, even if it becomes safe to resume in-person programming. Lastly, one of our goals of our research project is to share this data. Once we've collected it and finalized it, we hope to share this with other cooperative extension systems so that they're able to learn from one another and see what other extensions did during this really unprecedented time. Overall, this subsample of data emphasizes that cooperative extensions in fact adjust their programming and resources for early childhood education teachers in many ways. And I would just like to thank Dr. Spears very much for allowing me to work on this project with her during this past semester. Thank you.
Any questions? Great job presenting. Again, if you do have questions, you can raise your hand or you can go ahead and type it into the Q&A function. Okay, well, thank you so much, Azraela. And we will move on then to our next presenter, Jessica Bauer.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Bauer and I'll be discussing my research I conducted alongside Dr. Timothy Adish on perceived healthcare support in genetics. So this research interested me because I'm considering a profession in the field of genetics and I wanted to learn how I could support my future patients. But since this field is new and genetic disorders are rare, research on topics specific to support for patients is very limited. And specialized support in medicine can be critical because many patients who have been newly diagnosed may not understand or be aware of the science behind their genetics of their condition and could turn to other resources to better understand those explanations. So given the limited research in this area, I decided to try to understand the type of support that patients did and did not receive from their healthcare professionals at the time of diagnosis. To do this, I distributed an anonymous survey through the convenience of email listservs, social media posts, flyers, and snowballing. The survey included a range of questions to help gather an understanding of the participant's diagnosis, family composition, change in the family following the diagnosis, and support received from general healthcare professionals, as well as support received from genetic specialists if they were referred to and made contact with one. The data collection ended in February of this year, and we received 26 eligible responses that were then analyzed in SPSS. As you can see in the bottom left table, the sample from the study included participants ranging from ages 18 to 85 years old, with over half responding as a person in close relation with someone who had been diagnosed with a genetic disorder, and a third reporting a diagnosis of a genetic disorder brought on by mutation in the genome along with environmental impact. Through the participant responses, we found the more support they received following their diagnosis, the higher quality the support was rated. We also found that most support still needed to provide better explanations and resources for further assistance in understanding the diagnosis. This was specifically seen in the responses for the most and least helpful types of support provided. So the explanation of the genetics and management of the condition, along with support groups and additional resources, were noted as the most helpful type of support provided. But even though this support was provided, there were forms of the same type of support that were actually considered less helpful. For instance, when participants found explanations of the genetics and management of the condition to be limited or non-comprehensible, they considered this support to be least helpful. Similarly, when there was a lack of communication specific to updates or repetitive information between the staff and the individual, participants found communication to then be the least helpful type of support. So from this current study and past research, I found that insufficient explanations and communication can be fixed by using a genetic specialist referral to bridge that gap that comes with the lack of specialization in general healthcare settings, and overall provide additional support and knowledge on future expectations for the disorder. On the top right, we see that the study found the most common types of support provided by healthcare professionals to an individual or the family were the focus of general well-being, consistent and open communication, a comprehensive explanation of the genetics of the condition, and realistic expectations. The most interesting data that was pulled from this research was that out of 26 participants, only 3 were referred to a genetic specialist, and of those 3, only 2 made contact with one. And from these 2 participants, it was noted that the genetic specialist provided them with additional research, resources, education, assessments, and testing for their genetic disorder diagnosis. Overall, I found participants appreciated when support was educational and informative. And this aligns with the current research that is currently found. The more knowledge an individual is given on their disorder, the better their understanding will be to help physically and mentally manage some of its impact. This may be particularly important in navigating people from solely relying on the internet, which can have negative anecdotes along with very limited information. Current research also supports my findings in that not many people diagnosed with a genetic disorder are actually referred to a genetic specialist. Instead, they're solely at the hands of general healthcare providers that may not have specific knowledge or expertise in the individual's diagnosis. And as seen in my research, when participants are given insufficient or non-comprehensive information, which can come from a lack of expertise, this support is then deemed less helpful than that of the support that has detailed and informing content. From these results, it's important for general healthcare professionals to refer and strongly encourage patients and their families to seek out the help of genetic specialists. This research did have a limited sample size due to the rarity of genetic disorders and the timeliness of the distribution following the diagnosis. In the current study, it was found that there was a statistically significant association between the amount of care received and the change in family dynamic, meaning the more care the individual diagnosed had received, the more change there was in their family dynamics. So future research should be considered to help understand the statistic and find ways to support families that are affected by the potential changes that are brought on by a diagnosis. And the future research can include a method for a larger sample size and more qualitative data to better understand support in their healthcare experiences. Thank you all for listening. I'll open the floor to any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Jessica. That was a great job. And we do have one question here. Did participants ever speak to feeling like a burden to healthcare providers, or actually that they mattered and their struggle was heard?
Yeah, so I think to answer this question, it's important to note that in the most and least helpful types of support, that question that was asked, that was where we got the most qualitative data. And it was more so that there wasn't enough support. We didn't generally ask if they felt heard, but it was more so how much support did you receive? How much did you feel supported? And we kind of found that if they weren't receiving a lot of support, they weren't rating that support as high quality, where if they were receiving a large amount of support, then that support was seen as high quality.
We have another question here in the Q&A. Why are genetic disorders so rare?
Yeah, as of now, there's multiple reasons. I think one of the biggest reasons is that the field of genetics is rare in itself. It's new. We're having new technology to discover genetics, and maybe with the advance in technology, we'll find more disorders, but it's also because mutations in themselves are rare, and sometimes mutations can be deadly and they won't be able to be passed on. And so the people that can survive from those potential deadly mutations pass it on, and then it just becomes more unlikely to survive it.
Thank you. Any more questions? Again, you can type it into the Q&A. You're also welcome to raise your hand if you have questions. Okay, so we can move on then to, thank you very much, great job. And we can move on to our next presenter, Grace Murray.
Hi, everyone. This poster described the development of a series of early literacy handouts, one component of a larger early literacy program being developed and delivered by University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. The larger program is targeted towards 4 Southern Navajo Nation chapters near Sanders, Arizona, and the San Carlos Apache tribal lands. It's developed for parents, grandparents, and other caregivers of 0 to 6-year-old children, and features culturally appropriate early literacy materials and events that provide parents and caregivers with resources and tools to promote literacy within their homes. The handouts were structured around 5 core early literacy practices, which are talking, singing, playing, writing, and reading. Research suggests that these practices help improve early literacy skills. The handouts were developed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the suspension of in-person programming. They were designed to provide activities that parents and caregivers of 0 to 6-year-old children could do with their children that would not require internet access, as well as providing activities for children that are free or low cost and can be done using items likely found around the house, such as pencils, crayons, or paper. The language used in the handouts is at a 5th grade reading level or below in order to reach as many families as possible. I developed 14 handouts on a variety of topics. For example, using games to promote early literacy, talking during meal times, tracing letters, and singing. One handout suggests that the parent or caregiver follows their child's lead and allows them to explore their interests in different objects around the house in order to facilitate learning. The handout provides an explanation at the top of the page and then 3 suggestions to try at home, such as noticing what your child is drawn to, describing the object to them, as well as asking them questions about the object that they are focused on. Handouts are posted on the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension and Facebook page. The handouts were posted on March 1st of this year, and so far the program website has had 77 unique views, with people viewing it for an average of 1 minute and 6 seconds. The Facebook posts were viewed by an average of 180 unique viewers and received an average of 12 comments or shares. These numbers are similar or better than the reach for materials posted by other extension programs in San Carlos and Gila County, and suggest that the community is starting to engage with the handouts. Hard copies of the handouts were also distributed in the community through Head Start centers, public schools, wellness centers, and other community partners. I would like to thank the project team as well as funding supporters like the USDA and the Frances McClelland Institute for their support in this project, and thank all of you for listening, and I'll take any questions that you have.
Great presentation, Grace.
Thank
Again,
you.
questions, you can raise your hand or you can type it into the chat. Okay, then we will move on to our next presenter. Our next presenters, presentation team.
Diane, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Diane. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am an undergraduate student at Arizona State University and I'm studying history.
Hi, my name is Simmer. My pronouns are he, his. I'm also an undergraduate student at Arizona State University and I'm studying kinesiology.
The title of our poster is A Qualitative Family Distancing and Youth Outcomes, Biculturalism and Moderation. For the literature review, Latinx students experience elevated rates of depressive symptoms and risky behavior when compared to their white counterparts. Cultural developmental theory suggests that ethnic minority youth experience unique stressors that cause maladaptation. However, there is also strengths-based work which make it clear that despite these stressors, ethnic minority youth find refuge in their own cultural values to protect themselves from these stressors. We investigated acculturative family distancing as one of those unique stressors. Acculturative family distancing, or AFD, can be defined as the distancing between parent and child due to differences in cultural values. Children of marginalized communities find themselves in situations where the cultural practices at home are simply different from the cultural practices in their school climate. These unfamiliar encounters manifest themselves in holidays, languages, and food. In previous research, AFD has been linked to clinical depression and family conflict among Latinx and Asian families.
So with this in mind, the first goal of our study was to test whether AFD operated as a risk factor for Latinx youth. And specifically, we hypothesized that AFD would be positively related to depressive symptoms and risky behavior. In line with some strengths-based work that highlight the unique cultural assets ethnic minority youth have, the second goal of our study was to explore whether biculturalism moderated the relations between AFD, depressive symptoms, and risky behavior. Biculturalism is a psychological construct that captures the extent to which individuals internalize aspects of two cultures in their personal identity and can be categorized into 3 domains: advantage, or the benefits one sees in living in a dual cultural environment; facilities, which is the ease to which one responds to behavioral demands within their dual cultural context; and comfort, the feelings associated with one's capacity in navigating their dual cultural world. Based on this, we hypothesized that the 3 subsets of biculturalism will serve as a protective factor and mitigate the positive relations between AFD to depressive symptoms and risky behavior.
Participants in this study came from a mixed method study of 208 Latinx students and their parents recruited from middle schools in the Southwest. This study utilized data from 189 Latinx students who had complete data on all study variables. Students completed online surveys using Qualtrics. Key demographic information of the sample is shown on the poster. And the measures we used were AFD, risky behavior, depressive symptoms, and biculturalism. Further information of these measures can also be found on the poster. Study hypotheses were tested using linear regressions ran in R, and significant interactions were probed using simple slopes analysis.
Starting with goal 1, which focused on direct relations between AFD and outcomes, we found that AFD was positively associated with both risky behavior and depressive symptoms. So in other words, Latinx youth who reported higher levels of acultural family distancing also reported elevated levels of risky behavior and depressive symptoms. Results for goal 2 revealed significant interactions between AFD and bicultural comfort on risky behavior. As shown in the graph, simple slopes probing indicated that high levels of comfort mitigated the relationship between AFD and risky behavior. So in other words, for youth who had high levels of comfort, their relation between AFD and risky behavior was reduced in strength, but youth who had low comfort relations between AFD and risky behavior were stronger.
This is the first study to examine biculturalism as a protective factor in the relationship between acculturative family distancing and risky behavior and depressive symptoms for Latinx youth. Consistent with past theory and our own hypotheses, our study results indicate that acculturative family distancing is one of those unique stressors that Latinx youth are particularly vulnerable to. Additionally, consistent with strengths-based work and offering partial support for our hypothesis, our study shows that in spite of these stressors, aspects of youth's culture, such as biculturalism, can serve as protective factors helping mitigate the effects of stress. It could be that biculturalism comfort provides Latinx adolescents with a sense of security when navigating a dual cultural environment, which is why it protects them from the negative experiences associated with AFD. Results of our study also indicate that biculturalism comfort could be a key target for intervention. Schools can try to reinforce this by fostering accepting environments within their school climate and by implementing an academic curriculum which seeks to empower Latinx youth, promoting comfort in their own identity.
So overall, our study highlights both the impact of unique stress processes and the unique cultural assets present in marginalized communities and offers biculturalism as a potential new intervention target. The study was limited to a sample of youth from a specific Southwest region in the United States and cannot be generalized to all Latinx students. The cross-sectional nature of the study is also a limitation that we cannot assess direction of effects. Future work should evaluate relations over time. In closing, we would like to thank our funders, the WT Grant Foundation, our team at the Voices Project for their mentorship and guidance, FMI for providing us this opportunity to present our research, and most importantly, the families and students who took their time to share their voice with us. We look forward to your questions, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane and Simran. I do want to point out one of the powers of this virtual format is that we had a joint presentation from students at ASU and U of A. So really fantastic to see that kind of teamwork and collaboration. We do have a comment, more than a question from Katie Siders. Just a comment, great presentation. The ways that you set up the larger context of acculturative family distancing was helpful, and I loved the emphasis on strengths such as biculturalism.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, we really wanted to, we realized that there were a lot of stressors that come with being a minority or part of a marginalized community. And we really wanted to stress that although there are stressors, there are also different assets as part of being a marginalized community that, that can kind of protect those stressors. So thank you for the comment.
Other questions or comments? Okay, then we will move on to the next presenter, Rachel Perez.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Rachel. I use she, her pronouns. I'm really happy to be presenting this research. To provide a little background, The Latinx population accounts for almost 20% of the US population, with a projected growth of up to 24% by 2065. And approximately 4% of Latinx adults identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and among these adults, internalized homonegativity, or IH, is associated with greater psychological distress and lower self-esteem. So really the goal of this study was to investigate to what extent preparation for heterosexist bias relates to internalized homonegativity. And we also wanted to examine what potential factors could moderate this relationship, specifically looking at self-esteem and networks' views of LGBTQ plus people. For the study, we only examined the views of parents, siblings, and extended family, as they appear to be important networks for Latinx populations. We hypothesized that prep for heterosexist bias would be positively associated with internalized homonegativity. We also hypothesized that both self-esteem and supportive views would buffer the association between prep for bias and IH. The study consisted of 385 self-identified Latinx and LGBTQ plus youth residing in the US or a US territory, and regression analyses were used to test the moderating roles of networks views and self-esteem on the association between prep for bias and IH. So in terms of results, main effects, we found that heterosexist bias was significantly and positively related to IH. We also found that parents' supportive views of LGBTQ plus people, as well as extended families' views, were significantly and positively related to IH. However, we didn't find significant main effect of siblings' views on IH. We did also find that only siblings' views and extended families' views significantly moderated the association between prep for bias and IH. So specifically, the positive relationship between prep for bias and IH was stronger among those with higher levels of supportive views of LGBTQ plus people from siblings and extended family, and weaker among those with lower levels of those support. And then we also found self-esteem to be significantly and negatively related to IH, and found that self-esteem significantly moderated the association between prep for bias and internalized homonegativity. So LGBTQ plus youth and young adults with high self-esteem in the context of low preparation for bias reported the lowest levels of internalized homonegativity. Okay, so to reiterate, preparation for bias was indeed found to relate to higher levels of internalized homonegativity, which is what we hypothesized. So an interpretation of this could be that parents can warn youth about bias or discrimination, but perhaps not sharing an LGBTQ plus identity keeps them from knowing how to effectively speak to the positive aspects of holding such an identity. And so it's really important to make youth feel like they're not helpless in the outside world, or that they should constantly and only expect to face bias and discrimination from other people. Additionally, contrary to our hypotheses, parent and extended family supportive views towards the LGBTQ plus community were found to relate to higher levels of internalized homonegativity. So rather than acting as a buffer, which is what we hypothesized, supportive views seem to exacerbate the relationship, such that the combination of high supportive views with high preparation for bias resulted in the highest levels of internalized homonegativity. So perhaps the time period of the study could shed light on these results. Data was collected during a time in which the debate of legalizing same-sex marriage was occurring. So maybe households had conversations about these topics, and there could be a disconnect. And that disconnect being that maybe these parents and extended families demonstrated supportive views of other LGBTQ plus youth, but those views, maybe they didn't think they applied to them, right? Resulting in more negative internalizing values. So maybe to address this in the future, scales could more explicitly distinguish between whether individuals are being asked to report supportive views of their LGBTQ plus identity rather than the LGBTQ plus identity at large, because that could be a big distinction. Again, in this study, we also found that self-esteem seemed to be protected, but only in terms of low preparation for bias. So this could indicate that preparation for heterosexist bias, especially if it's occurring frequently, needs to be paired with messages that don't impact one's positive beliefs about their LGBTQ plus identity. And lastly, an overall suggestion for this is for future work to be more intentional with asking how preparation for bias occurred, right? So for instance, explicitly asking those youth and young adults if they believe the preparation was meant to be positive and educational, or perhaps they experienced actions enacted by family members or certain networks that made them realize that they could face discrimination based on their identity. So yeah, I think doing this work could inform programs and help families learn how to more effectively prepare their youth to face heterosexist bias without actually harming their pride or causing them to internalize negative values about their identity. And yeah, so to wrap up, like all youth deserve to grow up in an environment that helps them attain a positive sense of self. And so that's why I was really happy to do this research and demonstrate these results. And a special thank you to Dr. Toomey for letting me use your work, to Kayla for helping me put all this together, Dr. Ziders for reviewing this. Just thank you so much. I'm really glad to be doing this. Do I have any questions?
Thank you, Rachel. You did a terrific job. You do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. And so I will read them out loud so everyone can hear them, but you're welcome to read them yourself as well. Was there a reason in the sample to target age groups 14 to 24?
Yeah, I don't know if Dr. Toomey wants to speak to this, but typically 14 to 24 is like emerging youth, right? And there seems to be a lot of maybe Dr. Toomey could speak to this more if through commenting, but I would say that this is just an important group to acknowledge, because that's when adolescence is most important, right? And youth are developing, so it's important to research these groups, to then put out that research to suggest, well, this is an important time in development, and this is when they're developing their pride, right, and self-esteem. And so if we can find that certain factors are impacting those abilities to then demonstrate, those abilities to be able to create a positive sense of self, like we want to target it in these groups when they're like developing and their sense of identity, like more than any other or age groups.
And I can just jump in. This is
Go for it.
We really wanted to examine, the reason we had that age range was we wanted to examine whether there were differences among adolescents and young adults.
Okay, and then I also see that there's a question about how the preparation for bias scale was adapted or created. And so for this study, we use an adapted version of the Hughes and Johnson 2011 measure. And so that measure specifically addresses like, it's created for measuring preparation for bias specific to ethnic and racial identity. And so that itself was adapted to then ask questions about sexual orientation. So the broad instructions were to find out experiences about with their parents and guardians. So over the past year, explain how often you've experienced this from your parents. So the questions were, talk with you about others trying to limit you because of your sexual orientation. So previously it was examining race and ethnicity. So it would just be because of your racial or ethnic identity. So in those ways, it was adapted to ask about sexual orientation. So limiting you, telling you that you won't get this, you must be better to get the same rewards, or talking to someone else about discrimination because your sexual orientation, talk to someone else about discrimination because of your sexual orientation, so facing discrimination, or talked with you about unfair treatment specific to your sexual orientation. So that's how it was adapted.
Terrific answers. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Rachel. So our next presenter was unable to be here live, but was able to record a video of the presentation. So we will play that next.
Hi, my name is Nathan, and today I'm going to be presenting on the development of a program timeline for the Drug Treatment Alternative to Prison program, also known as DTAP. And so to give you a little background on what DTAP is, it's a program that's been offered by the Pima County Attorney's Office since 2011 and provides treatment and different services to prison-bound drug offenders. Participants are normally high risk, high need, and they are nonviolent repeat drug offenders that are on at least their second narcotics felony, and they are motivated to change. And so I work with the Community Research Evaluation and Development team, which provides evaluation for this program. With that evaluation, there has been a lot of changes to DTAP since 2011, And so the purpose of this was to track those changes, and this will allow us to provide further context when reviewing participation and program outcomes. And so for the methods for data collection, I looked at previous evaluation reports and previous meeting notes, and I was able to find major program changes and kind of organize them by time. And then I conducted an interview with Kate Vesely, who is the former director of specialty courts in Pima County, who provided a lot of information for the gaps we had in the data. I then analyzed the data and established different themes for program changes. And some examples are eligibility criteria, screening, treatment options, partners, and funding sources. And these were just a couple of the themes that I found had significant changes over the past 10 years. I then created the timeline using Adobe InDesign, and I made 2 versions. The full version is in the results section below, and then I also have a condensed 1-page version of the timeline. And then these timelines were internally reviewed by members of the CRED team. And so I'll talk about a couple major program changes. The first being with eligibility criteria. So in 2013, eligibility criteria was expanded to include drug sales under certain circumstances. It included drug-related property offenses, included those with severe mental illness diagnoses, and then those with multiple felonies as well. And then in 2014, they reviewed all of the rejected participants to ensure that the participants in DTAP were representative of the overall justice system population. And then another major program change was the addition of the intensive outpatient treatment. And this provides treatment for those who don't have the level of addiction or need to go into residential treatment. And this was fully implemented in 2015, but there was a trial in 2014 that was conducted. In 2016, we had the addition of medication-assisted treatment. Methadone and Suboxone options were added at this time. And then in 2018, Vivitrol was added as a medication-assisted treatment option as well. And then finally, there was a heavy focus on adhering to the adult drug court best practice standards. So the National Association of Drug Court Professionals released 2 volumes of best practice standards. We as an evaluation team also evaluated the DTAP program based on these best practice standards too. And so there has been a heavy focus on adhering to these best practice standards. And then for the next steps, the data collected for the timeline will be used to provide context for future program outcomes and participation. And then the timelines will also be reviewed by the DTAP leadership and the DTAP steering committee before being finalized. And that concludes my presentation on the development of the program timeline. Thank you. Hi, my name is Nate.
Okay, so we are now going to transition to presentations from graduate students. We have 3 presentations from Family Studies and Human Development graduate students, starting with Shen Zhao.
Is that me? Sorry, should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sorry
Sorry about that. Hi everyone, my name is Jinchan Zhao, and I'm a third-year doctoral student at the Family Studies and Human Development Department. Thanks for this opportunity presenting my thesis study titled Sexual Orientation-Based Victimization and Internalized Homonegativity Among Latinx Sexual Minority Youth, the Moderating Effect of Social Support and School Level. So in the heteronormative society, sexual minority youth are exposed to multiple stressors related to their sexual orientation. Among various forms of stressors, some of them are originated from the heteronormative society, such as sexual orientation-based victimization. These stressors may further influence views of sexual minority youth to their own sexual identities, such as internalized homonegativity. However, protective factors may mitigate internalization of these heterosexist experiences. Therefore, this study explored the relationship between sexual orientation-based victimization and internalized homonegativity, as well as the moderating effect of social support and school level. These models were examined in three social contexts, including family, peer, and school adults. The sample used in the current study consists of 238 Latinx sexual minority youth aged from 14 to 24. Participants completed a survey on sexual orientation-based victimization, internalized homonegativity, social support in family, peer, and school contexts, respectively, as well as their school level. Regressions analysis were conducted to examine three-way interactions of sexual orientation-based victimization, perceived social support, and school level and internalized homonegativity in three contexts, including family, peers, and school adults. Significant interactions were probed using simple slope analysis, and missing data were handled using full information maximum likelihood. Regression results are shown in the table 1. I know this is a little bit hard to look at, but I hope that doesn't have a bad effect on your rating. But as you can see in the figure 1, we found that there's a significant three-way interaction among sexual orientation-based victimization, family support, and school level on internalized homonegativity, such that in high school, the positive association between victimization and internalized homonegativity is stronger under the higher levels of family support. But in college, this positive association is weaker under the higher levels of family support. No three-way interaction emerged in the peer context, but we found a significant two-way interaction between victimization and peer support, such that the association between victimization and internalized homonegativity was stronger under the higher levels of peer support. And there was no significant interaction nor main effect of school adult support emerged in the school adult context. So our findings highlight that the protective effect of social support only exists among college Latinx sexual minority youth. There could be several reasons for that. One of the reasons could be that the protective effect of social support in different social contexts are interactive rather than distinctive and unique. That is family support, peer support, school adult support, as well as other context-based support interactively mitigates the negative effect of sexual orientation-based victimization. Another important factor or reason that needs to be considered among Latinx sexual minority youth in particular is that the intersectional marginalization of ethnic minority identity and sexual minority identity. Although Latinx sexual minority, it is possible that although sexual minority youth perceive support for or regarding their sexual identity, the potential lack of support regarding their ethnic identity may exacerbate the negative effect of sexual orientation-based victimization on internalized homonegativity. So overall, Our study calls on the importance of exploring interactive processes of social support in different social contexts, and also intersectional experience between ethnic and sexual minority identities. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me for this study?
Great presentation. And again, you can either raise your hand or you can put a question, type a question directly into the Q&A function if you have a question for Jean.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to Sydney.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sydney Haynesworth. I'm a second-year graduate student at the University of Arizona, and this is my project comparing sexual orientation, identity development, in plurisexual versus monosexual Latinx youth. So people who identify as plurisexual, which can be defined as being attracted to more than one gender and includes labels such as bisexual, pansexual, and queer, represent about half of sexual minority adolescents. It's been well established that plurisexual youth face greater social exclusion and worse physical, mental, and emotional health than their monosexual peers who only experience attraction to one gender, such as being gay or lesbian. However, most studies of sexual minority adolescents analyze plurisexual and monosexual youth together without considering possible differences between these groups. In addition, the majority of prior studies that have focused on identity development among sexual minority populations have used samples that are primarily white. These theories and assumptions that are based off of a majority white sample are then applied to youth of color, despite these possibly not being accurate comparisons. In order to gain a more nuanced understanding of identity development, this study utilizes a sample of Latinx sexual minority youth. The first research question for this study is, do plurisexual Latinx youth differ on three facets of sexual orientation identity development compared to monosexual youth? These three facets are exploration, resolution, and affirmation. Given that plurisexual youth have been found to have lower feelings of connection to sexual minority communities, higher levels of identity confusion, and a lower level of outness when compared with lesbian and gay individuals, I hypothesized that plurisexual youth would have lower levels of all three facets of sexual orientation identity development compared to monosexual youth. The second research question is, does sexual orientation moderate the relationship between sexual orientation identity development and mental health outcomes of depression and self-esteem? For this question, the associations between the three identity constructs and mental health indicators will be moderated by sexuality, and this is an exploratory question with no definitive hypothesis. The sample included 365 Latinx sexual minority youth who completed an online cross-sectional survey. Participants were between 14 and 24 years of age. The majority of the sample identified as of either Mexican or Puerto Rican descent. The majority of participants identified as monosexual and 15% identified as plurisexual. The sample was 75% male, 19% female, and 2% transgender, and about 95% of participants were born in the United States. Sexual orientation identity development was measured with the Sexual Orientation Identity Development Scale. There's 7 total items and 3 subscales, 2 items for affirmation, 2 items for exploration, and 3 items for resolution. Depressive symptoms were measured with the short 10-item version of the Center for Epidemiologic Studies Depression Scale, and self-esteem is measured by a self-esteem scale, which also has 10 items. So contrary to our hypothesis, we found that plurisexual youth were higher than monosexual youth on all 3 identity development assets. There was a large effect size for affirmation and a medium effect size for exploration and resolution. For the second hypothesis, the main effects model showed that affirmation, exploration, and resolution were all significantly positively associated with self-esteem among all youth. Exploration and resolution were not significantly associated with depression, but once we added sexual orientation as a moderator, affirmation was found to not be statistically significantly associated with depression among plurisexual youth, but was negatively associated with depression for monosexual youth. So examining the results from our first research question hypothesis, The conclusion that we drew is that since plurisexual youth face a lack of resources and social support about plurisexual identities, perhaps the youth in our sample have had to engage in more exploration, resulting in higher levels of resolution and affirmation compared to monosexual youth. Higher levels of sexual orientation identity are typically associated with lower levels of depressive symptoms and higher self-esteem. And we did find that affirmation, exploration, and resolution contributed to higher self-esteem for all youth, regardless of identity. But we also found that sexual orientation identity affirmation was a buffer against depression for monosexual youth, but not for plurisexual youth. Given that plurisexual youth often face social exclusion from monosexual peers, having high self-affirmation may make this within group rejection more difficult, thereby weakening the protective element of affirmation. Future research is needed to examine these associations and to examine how to cultivate welcoming spaces for plurisexual youth. Thank you.
Great presentation, Sydney. Any questions? It's hard to know just the right time to wait in a virtual format. Okay, so I think we will move on then to Sei Kim's presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Sei Kim and I appreciate this opportunity to present our study with you today. Our study profiles the discussions of race, ethnicity, and discrimination of East Asian American families during the COVID-19 pandemic aimed to understand how racialization of the pandemic and increased discrimination against Asian Americans affected families' discussions on racial knowledge. Drawing on transactional and ecological perspective, we view racial ethnic socialization and families' microsystems within other levels of the ecological environment as a mutually defining process. Using person-centered analysis, we examined how diverse social interactions, such as the current anti-Asian discrimination, have modified East Asian American family discussions centered on race, ethnicity, racism, and discrimination. Our sample included 143 second-generation East Asian American youth, ages 11 to 18, who attend middle or high school in the US. We used measures of maintenance of heritage culture and awareness of discrimination within the Asian American Parental Racial Ethnic Socialization Scale. Questions on race, ethnicity-related family discussions during COVID-19 were also asked about their own race and ethnicity, other races and ethnicities, living in the US as Asian Americans, racism and discrimination in the US, and racism and discrimination towards Asian Americans due to COVID-19 pandemic. Overall, the results of the latent profile analysis suggest that different types of discussions on race relations form distinct groups. The largest profile group, about 42% of the youth sample, reported moderate racial knowledge of other ethnicities with moderate levels of discussions on all topics, with less emphasis on participants' own ethnicity. All first-generation caregivers may not be as vocal to discuss difficult topics such as discrimination and social injustice. Contextual demands, including social movements such as Black Lives Matter, may have informed the caregivers' deliberate efforts to include discussions on other race-related topics. The second largest profile group, 32% of the sample, with high racial knowledge through high levels of race-related discussions on all topics, may have been driven by the hostile social interactions for Asian Americans during the pandemic. The third group, 18% of the sample, demonstrates moderate racial knowledge of their own ethnicity. So in contrast to the largest profile group, emphasis on their own ethnicity also reflect the challenging contextual demands for Asian Americans, as caregivers may have been more proactive and deliberate about reinforcing heritage culture and instilling pride in their own group. The fourth group, about 8% of the sample, labeled as low racial knowledge, indicated low discussions on all 5 topics. This might reflect caregivers' lack of prior experiences in school and community settings that may have prompted changes in conversations on race relations compared to other groups. Multinomial logistic regression was conducted to examine the predictive effects of maintenance of heritage culture and awareness of racism on the latent profile of racial knowledge. At the covariate level, age, gender, and ethnicity were not predictive of the latent profile of racial knowledge, whereas school composition was associated with latent profile of racial knowledge. Youth who attend schools mostly comprised of non-white students or mostly Asian students were more likely to be in the moderate racial knowledge of own ethnicity group rather than in the profile of moderate racial knowledge of other ethnicities. Also, Asian American youth who went to school that was mostly composed of other non-white students were more likely to be in the profile of moderate racial knowledge of own ethnicities rather than in the profile of high racial knowledge. Further, East Asian American youth who report higher levels of maintenance of heritage culture were more likely to be in the profile of high racial knowledge or moderate racial knowledge of their own ethnicity rather than in the profile of moderate racial knowledge of other ethnicities or in the profile of low racial knowledge. Likely, those who reported higher levels of awareness of discrimination were more likely to be in the profile of high racial knowledge and profile of moderate racial knowledge of other ethnicities, but less likely to be in the profile of low racial knowledge. Collectively, family discussions that yield racial knowledge in response to the concerns about racism and discrimination during the COVID-19 pandemic echo in distinct patterns across groups. Meaningfully differentiated groups highlight the importance of considering the interactions within continuously evolving social contexts that may jointly inform different sets of family discourse and racialized experiences. Thank you, and thank you for your time and attention.
Excellent presentations today. I do see we have one question from Katie Ziders. Great presentation today and a really good use of LPA. From your qualitative data, do you have some insight into how families are talking about race within East Asian American families, and what are things that encourage these conversations?
Katie, are you referring to this specific study or a different qualitative study? Because this was a quantitative study.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought maybe this was there was qualitative pieces. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I was just actually interested in your insight broadly. I know that maybe not even specific to this study, but generally that you've been doing some of this work and some qualitative work around the topic.
Right.
This is a great
I can't really
presentation,
speak
by the way.
to, yeah, I can't really clearly speak to the qualitative data because I haven't collected them. But hopefully in the future, I will have some kind of qualitative data that can really meaningfully explain the discrepancy between parents' socialization and children's youth's interpretation of how they deal with discrimination.
Thank you for that. It was a really great presentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Say. We're now going to transition to the last group of presenters. And before we hear from the students, I'd like Dr. Rick Wood, who is the instructor for Family Studies and Human Development 408, to give us a little bit of explanation about the class projects. So we will turn the camera and the microphone over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks to FMI for allowing this amazing group of students to present their work that they have been involved in for, all semester. And actually, a lot of the projects that they worked on and developed are the result of, in some cases, lifetime passions for a specific topic. Just to give you a little bit of background and the work that these amazing students have done, the course is designed for specific group or either groups or individuals to develop a human services / social service organization. And it all begins with a mission statement and their collective, or if it's a group, collective or an individual's desire to see what kind of social problems they are encountering that they see that needs to be changed. And they go ahead and design an agency to address that issue. And it starts with their mission statement of where they want to go with their objectives. It transitions into what's called a logic model of all the things they would need and what they're trying to affect. Then to what's called a needs assessment, And the needs assessment is they go out into the community and look at the existing situation and or problems and start generating actually the numbers and the qualitative problems that are occurring. That is followed by researching the best practice and developing an intervention to go and create this program to serve clients and serve others. From there, they develop the foundation of what's called a flowchart. In other words, what happens to a client the day that they walk into this agency? Who do they encounter and what is their experience? And they also generate what's called an organizational chart of how many people they're going to need to provide services. That transitions into a budget. These students have spent countless hours going out and finding out how much it costs to deliver social service and steps of goodness in the community, and how much that actually costs on a daily basis. And finally, they come up with an evaluation plan that harkens back to one of the earlier presenters, who talked about an evaluation of the drug treatment program at Pima County Attorney's Office. So the other point that I'd like to add is that these students are remarkable in their creativity and their insight. We provide the structure and the kind of the ideas, and then the TA and I try to step back and let them grow. And what they have produced that you will see in the next hour or so could actually work, with some tweaking, of course, and lots of money, which is always the stumbling block for lots of human services. But the level of detail and the thought that went into these, in the future, they could actually do these things. In the past, we've had some students that have actually implemented programs. So after all of that, so that can help you follow exactly the presentations that they're going to make. So it's Alana, Noah, and Wendy, and Zia, and Madison, Jennifer, and Emer, and other students of 408. So I'll turn it back over to Melissa, and just take a deep breath and follow along and see how wonderful and what an amazing job these students have done. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you so much for that explanation. You have set a very high bar, but I have no doubt the students' presentations will live up to that bar, and we're excited to hear from them. Our first group of presenters couldn't be here today, but they did record their presentation, so we'll play that now.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Sigmund.
And I'm Jordan Hepburn, and we are from FSHD 408 with Dr. Wood. Our project is called the Golden State Women's Shelter.
Our mission statement is to provide a rehabilitation program for homeless women and their children who live in San Francisco County. We would like to provide women with the adequate resources to get on the path of rehabilitation and get off of the streets. Our main social issue here is providing shelter and rehab for homeless women in San Francisco. The Bay Area has the third largest population of homeless people in the United States, with 28,200 people. Our main resource input is that our hotel will be located in San Francisco with approximately 325 rooms. We will also be providing staff of 8 counselors, 15 janitors, 16 on-site chefs, 8 OBGYN, 10 daycare providers, 15 job counselors, and 16 nurses. We would like to provide room and board for 6 months, as well as mental health visits and health screens, and provide clothing, makeup, and job aid. Our goal is to reduce the number of homeless women and children by 25% by the year 2022.
Our needs assessment is based on an average of 2,574 women, around 643 families. There are 325 average rooms in a hotel, so 1 person or 1 family per room for up to 6 months. Our demographic includes homeless women and their families of any age and any ethnicity. We want to make sure that we have an inclusive staff that speaks, different languages for them as well, and so that they can help them the best that they can and communicate. Our intervention and best practice includes our clients filling out a series of forms in regards to mental health and physical health history. The mental health counselors will help women and children pass the Beck's depression inventory after mental health treatment. We will also have a job counselor program that will assist women in a workshop of how to build a resume, interview necessities, and how to look presentable. And our specialists will be trained to administer the proper programs in order to help these women and children obtain housing one day.
Moving on to our flow chart and organization chart. So for the flow chart, we're basically going over how the program works and how our clients go through our program. And then the organization chart is a breakdown of all of our staff. So we have our executive director, which is in charge of everyone, our hotel management, our service coordinator, our financial team, and our health program coordinator. And moving on to our budgets. So we have an annual budget of $23,993,258 per year. Personnel will be paid based on their San Francisco salary. And we have all of our hotel staff, infrastructure, computers and support, supplies, transportation, all included in our annual budget.
Our program eval includes our research question, which would be, does the implementation of the Golden State Women's Shelter program create an adequate amount of resources to get on the path to rehabilitation and get off the streets? Our outcome measure would be our level of successes, and we truly believe that the women who will join this program will significantly improve their gain of tangible job offers, acceptances, mental and physical health, forms assessments, and level of increased mental and physical health. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we will move forward with our presentations from students who are here today, and we will use the same format as we used for the previous group. So the presenters will present their project, and then we will allow a few minutes for Q&A, either typing your question into the Q&A function or raising your hand, and we will allow you to speak to ask your question. So go ahead, Wendy.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to present. So my idea is for a tech support facility in Sun City, and it was actually inspired by my grandma. She would always come over. She lived in Sun City, and she would come to my home in Phoenix and would just be so frustrated with her technology. And it was usually really simple things, but she just couldn't figure out how to learn them. And my dad was very tech savvy, but the way he would explain it would kind of go over her head. And I saw that this was a problem that I'm sure not only my grandma was facing. And so I did a little bit of research to see if something like a solution was out there. And there were some clubs that got together in Sun City to talk about technology, but none of them were really an official structured service. And they were kind of like, not everybody could utilize them and such and such. So my idea is for this facility, well, I'll go ahead and just share with you my mission statement. It's to educate members of the 55+ Sun City community on modern technology so that they can reap the benefits of reduced stress and frustration, increase their ability to stay connected, and also increase their self-sufficiency in the amount of time that they can age from home. And so those are really the three main reasons why I think that this could be beneficial. And so in our needs assessment, I kind of proved that that was the case. So there was a lot of research of people saying that they were struggling with these types of things. Not very many people in that 65+ community felt confident using their electronics. And a lot of them did say that they needed help with any kind of new device, which there's new devices coming out all the time. And I think especially now with COVID going on and this more virtually connected environment that we're in, it's really important to make sure that we're including our elderly community in that support system. We all Zoom with our family members now, and We want to make sure that grandma and grandpa and our older aunts and uncles can be a part of that as well. And, it just requires a little bit of education. So the services that we plan to offer, there's 3 major ones. The first is going to be one-on-one tech support. So this could be over the phone if that's more accessible, or it could be in person at the studio that we're planning to host this at. And it could be for really anything. Maybe they just want to learn how to use something. Maybe it's troubleshooting. They're having some kind of issue. Maybe they need help setting up a new device. Really a range of solutions can be offered for this service. And then the next is more of a group educational tactics. So it'd be weekly workshops covering different issues that people are having in the community. And we would kind of get inspiration for those workshops based on what people want to see, maybe with a poll or just getting written suggestions. Somebody wants to learn how to use Alexa, or somebody wants to know how to use, Zoom. And we would have a little workshop on those topics. And then lastly, we plan to have a tech library. So in here would be computers, printers, copy machines, maybe like an iPad, smart devices, so that those who don't have access to them can still be connected if they choose to with technology. And, maybe they don't have a smart device because they're afraid they won't be able to use it. They can go to our tech library. There will be people on site to help them and ask, answer questions if they have any, and then maybe they'll be inspired to get connected online. So as for our staff, we plan to have a CEO who's kind of overseeing everything, the marketing coordinator, the lead tech guru, the secretary, and then breaking it down, we have 5 tech gurus and then 1 lead tech guru that oversees all of them and kind of manages those operations, communicates between them and the CEO. And one of those tech gurus would be responsible for the presentations and those workshops, whether it's developing the curriculum or presenting the curriculum, getting all the materials ready. And then we also want to make sure that we're really focused on the marketing, because if the people in the community don't know that this exists and that this is a resource, it's not really going to help anybody. So we want to have them, with all kind of creative approaches, whether it's posting in different community facilities in Sun City, or sending out flyers or emails, just getting the word out about this, because it will be, a free service that's available to anybody in the community. Okay, moving on to our budget. So salaries is going to be the most expensive part as usual, and it's going to come out to $569,000 for the first year for all of our staff. And some of these positions are part-time, so that's being taken into consideration. Our operations, which would include like utilities and the rent, is going to be $106,000 for the first year. Equipment would be $20,000, and then we have a miscellaneous section that would probably include a lot of marketing expenses, so that's $11,000. So total for our first year would be $707,000 and some change, and we would plan to get, kind of like grants or government funding to help us support this endeavor. And then lastly, for our evaluation plan, we really want to make sure that we're getting feedback from the people who come in. Our main premise and like what makes this unique as opposed to any other kind of tech support, like going to the Apple Genius Bar, is that it is so client focused, and everybody will be trained to have a lot of patience with the people who are at, one-on-one meetings or in the workshops. It should be like a really low stress, very understanding interaction that they have when they come into the facility. So we want to have a lot of surveys with feedback to improve, as well as use this data to get more funding in the future. So for example, if we have a workshop, having a pre-test and then a post-test to make sure that the way that we're demonstrating this education is actually effective and is educating the people who come, will probably be a good thing to have if we're trying to get more money. But also having it to make sure that, figuring out what kind of lessons people want to learn, how can we improve so that we're constantly growing and helping those in our community understand their technology. So I will yield the rest of my time to any questions.
Excellent presentation, a creative idea, and well thought out follow through. Any questions for Wendy? Okay, thank you, Wendy. We will move on to Zia and Madison.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zia Carroll.
I'm Madison Kelly.
And our organization is called Start Here. And Maddie will start with our mission statement.
Yeah, so I'll just read off to you our mission statement first. Our mission is to support mental health for homeless people in Pima County who suffer from mental disorders in order to improve their mental health and lives. And in doing this, we will see fewer first responder team responses and hospitalizations due to mental illness. Zia and I really just thought this up because, we took a look around in our community and we're both very interested in the mental health field and realized that the homeless population is just really underserved in regards to their mental health. And so that was really the inspiration for our project. I'll just briefly kind of explain our logic model to you. Our resources and inputs are just pretty much everything that it will take for us to run this program, all our therapists, the building, all that jazz. And then our processes and activities is just everything that we will be providing, like referrals, screenings, shelter, therapy, etc. Our outputs is everyone who will be in the Start Here program. And then our outcomes is really just to instill positive mental health practices in our patients, decrease the hospitalizations, and really have consistent outpatient communication with all the patients and their case managers. And then our impact, we just really hope to reduce the first responder calls, the hospitalizations, incarcerations, deaths, all related to mental health, untreated mental health disorders, and then just increase the access to effective treatment for our clients.
And so for our next section, Maddie touched on it, but our social problem is something that we've both seen living in Pima County for quite a while. And it's that we live in an urban area that lacks mental health services for the homeless population. And mental health services that are in place are often integrated into shelters that are underfunded. And it was one of the things that we noticed when we were doing this was that there wasn't a lot of data that we could find, and having organizations like this help for more research and data to come out in the community. But some of the reasons that we highlighted that this was a big issue is that about 17.7% of the homeless population in Pima County are suffering from a mental illness, but it's very likely that this is highly underreported because a lot of mental illnesses go undiagnosed, especially in this homeless community. So another thing that we're trying to do is get those diagnoses. And it looks like from the information we found, there's about 238 households, including multiple people in the family, that could benefit from this service. So our place is going to attempt to have about 1,400 clients per month with an average of about 17,500 per year. And that's broken up a bit into our 3 different types of services, which we will go into in just a moment in our flow chart.
Yes, so kind of tying into that as well, I'll give you a little description of our intervention that we would hope to provide with this program. Basically, what we would be trying to do is, of course, decrease these first responder calls and hospitalizations, incarcerations, by providing a case assessment before we determine any kind of treatment for the patients coming in. And so we would, through these case assessments and screenings, we would determine if the individual needs to be sheltered in our facility in order to become stabilized. We would do that. We would provide shelter for about 24 to 72 hours, just depending on the individual case. The other treatment option is to be referred out to a specialist outside of our program. And then the third one is if they need to receive regular counseling services provided by our center.
And if they fit into that category, then we will move on to the different kind of treatment option that we would provide. We hope to have therapists that are trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, psychosocial therapy, and family-based therapy, as well as mindfulness-oriented recovery enhancement treatment, which is called MORE. This is relatively new, but research has seen this to be primarily effective for those who are suffering with substance use and psychiatric disorders comorbidly, which is likely a very significant amount of the homeless population. And then we'll go into our organizational chart next.
So yeah, Maddie basically just described our flow chart. It gives sort of just a image version of that here, but basically from the door, our clients are referred from hospitals, MAC team calls, or themselves. And from there, we give our initial intake and screening, and then they can go into one of our 3 areas. So we can give our general counseling, referrals to other specialists, because our facility is not going to deal with any sort of medication or anything. So that's when we would refer outwards, or overnight shelter stabilization. So what our staff looks like for this is at the top, we have a director of operations. And then under that, we have some sort of different categories. So we have our facilities director that manages our janitors, security guards, that kind of stuff. And then it goes to our director of patient management and outreach. This is sort of our biggest branch because we really wanted our therapists and people who are actually serving our clients to also be in touch with our community outreach director. So that is to ensure that we are doing what we can and getting the right feedback from the community and changing our program in that way. So those are connected. And then we also have a legal consultant and a financial officer. That's sort of for like funding and payment and all of that.
So as you could see in that tiny little organizational chart on the screen here, we have quite the extensive list of personnel. So going into our budget, we have all different kinds of personnel that we kind of broke into little areas. We have our legal personnel, financial personnel, service, administrative, community outreach, and then facilities. And the subtotal of all of our personnel before the ERE benefits comes out to about 2.4 million. And then after we include the ERE benefits at 28%, it comes out to be at $3.1 million. And then we move on to our operation costs, which is basically just what it would cost to purchase our building, the utility bills, maintenance, anything like that. We hope to serve meals as well. So we estimated that to be about $447,000. And then we move on to our supplies, which is 25 beds, some computers, office supplies, and chairs for our patients to sit in. And that comes out to be about $27,000. And then for the whole year, we would have spent about $3.6 million.
So it's a very big program, and we have a pretty big budget, which is why we took a lot of time on our evaluation plan. So we have quantitative and qualitative here. But starting with our quantitative, our research question with this is to determine the relationship between homeless individuals with mental health issues and hospitalization rates. And so we want to do this by comparing the number of hospitalizations and MAC team calls in regards to mental health issues for the homeless population that are in our program and those that are not. So we will do this by getting data from the hospitals and the MAC team responses so that we can figure out those numbers. And through that, we're going to use a causal comparative design so that we can figure out the relationship that our program has in regards to reducing those hospitalizations and MAC team calls. For our qualitative analysis, we are looking at if our program actually helps improve the mental health of the homeless people in Pima County. So through this, we have a couple different routes that this is going to take, because this was something that's really important. Since we have such a big program, we really want to make sure it's actually being effective and treating what the community wants it to treat. So this is going to basically be done with surveys at the point of intake, as well as for our general therapy sessions. When clients come in at the beginning of each session or afterwards, they're going to be getting a survey where they can give some sort of feedback. And through this, our case managers are going to be analyzing and logging the responses so that they can track satisfaction over time and what is our main things that we feel like need to be changed. And through this, they're also going to be connected with our community outreach director so that those can be implemented and further researched within the community. And with that, that is our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Excellent, thorough presentation. Any questions for Zia and Maddie? Okay. Thank you so much, and we will move on to our next presentation group.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? My Wi-Fi has been a little not great today, so I just want to make sure.
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So hi, my name is Noah Garfine. So unfortunately, my partner Anna couldn't be with me presenting today, but our organization / nonprofit is called Amplify. So to start, Amplify's mission statement is to build the capacity of community leaders, educators, and representatives from marginalized or minority communities to promote in Pima County and the Tucson Unified School District youth sensitivity towards social issues, racial injustice, and inequalities. So as you can see from our really small logic model, the activities we'd be including in Amplify are educational seminars and inclusive activities that promote interaction such as diversity circle. Our goal at Amplify is to reduce racial bias, inequality, and cultural stigmas regarding diverse groups through these activities and seminars. So in our needs assessment, Amplify will be hosting seminars with about 5 to 6 Tucson middle schools to start. So this is approximately 30 students per class and 700 students total in the middle schools around the ages of 11 to 14. So we will provide the Tucson Unified, we'll provide the middle schools with multicultural seminars twice a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. And the goal is once again to reduce bias, stigma, racism among these demographics, from which you can see in the little charts provided. So from these graphs, it's easy to see that there are not many marginalized or minority groups, or there's not a lot of people within those. So fostering interaction between these groups is necessary. So for our intervention, truthfully, there's not a lot of research conducted on the practice that we are using, but what we do know is that there is a desperate need for education on this kind of a subject. So from statistics that we found, 61% of Americans express unfavorable views on Islam. Views on Muslim individuals have slightly improved, with 53% expressing favorable views. And as of last year, the first 50-state survey on Holocaust knowledge among millennials and Gen Z revealed that 63% did not know that over 6 million Jewish people died in the Holocaust. So based on this, researchers found that in 4 pan-ethnic groups, school-level diversity was associated with a lower sense of vulnerability, thus reducing racism, prejudice, and discrimination. So with this, Amplify will use activities that help promote diversity, such as Diversity Circle. So at Penn State, a researcher described Diversity Circle as it's a true definition of a safe space, not safe from ideas that challenge you, but rather a safe space where you could have these difficult conversations and engage with other people who may disagree with you, but without any hostility. So we thought that was really important to include in our group because we wanted people to get along, but also we want them to learn. So finally, social development in middle school years is a developmental milestone. And for that reason, we chose middle school as the time to administer this program because we believe it will reach them and stay with them the longest. So moving to the flow chart and the org chart. So Amplify works like this. So Amplify will reach out to a middle school. And if the program is approved by the middle school, then Amplify will provide the school with a pre-test survey to administer to the middle school students. So after that, 2 middle school classes a day for about 3 weeks will enter the auditorium, and they will begin the seminar 2 times a year, and facilitated by the Amplify staff and minority or marginalized community representatives. Students will participate in things like diversity, inclusive activities like Diversity Circle and Draw House, another diversity fostering activity. So students will then listen to a seminar about marginalized or minority community groups from the community representative experiences and things they would want the children to know. And 2 to 3 months after the program is finished, students are administered a post-test survey by their school just to see what they learned and what they retained. So if the program is not approved by the school, then we will revisit them at a later time with more data just to see if we can get it going at the school again. So moving to the company structure or the org chart, we have a decent amount of staff, but something we wanted to really touch on is that at Amplify, we believe that it is important to have a linguist for any language or cultural barriers, along with educational researchers to find and create the best tools to make this program as great as it possibly can be. So moving on to the budget, our budget is separated into a couple of different tabs. So we've got a directive team, administrative staff, education specialists, facility staff, operation costs, and supplies and equipment, leaving us at a total of $1,128,089. So definitely not cheap, but we will definitely figure that out along the way. And for our evaluation plan, it is both qualitative and quantitative. And for our hypothesis, it is the number of relationships that students have with other students of diverse ethnic and cultural backgrounds will be greater with Amplify's multicultural seminars compared to middle school students without Amplify's intervention. Amplify will also create a greater understanding of multiple cultural backgrounds, producing depth in the relationships. So for our overall design, we will be conducting a mixed method approach, so both qualitative and quantitative, to see the relationship between middle schools with Amplify's multicultural intervention and the number of diverse relationships compared to middle schools without Amplify's multicultural intervention and the number of diverse relationships. Amplify will also be conducting a survey for individual students to test their understanding of cultures presented in Amplify's intervention program. So finally, for our analysis technique, Amplify will collect data from the teachers and the school administration, calculating the number of relationships students have with other students of diverse ethnic and cultural backgrounds. So diverse backgrounds will be analyzed through individual student surveys based on age, race, religion, and gender. And Amplify defines relationships as contact, communication, and proximity with another student over time. So a test survey will be given to students as well to see if students understand the depth of other cultures taught through Amplify's intervention. So that would be it. Thank you so much all for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Noah, for that great presentation on a really important topic. Any questions for Noah? Okay, then we will move forward with our next presenter. We have Emily.
Hello, my name is Emily Carroll, and our organization is called Say No. Our mission statement is Say No is a company that assists adolescents in staying clean. So by providing a safe and healthy environment for students to go after school, to do homework, get some counseling, self-esteem counseling as well, and get to stay away from drugs and alcohol. This would be focused more in Maricopa County. So in Phoenix, there is a rate of 34.6% of high schoolers who are offered or given illegal drugs on school property. And another 7% of high schoolers report that they have misused prescription drugs at some point. So for our logic model, we have like who will be working, how many people, and it'd be about 6 certified counselors. We'd like to also have some volunteers in there as well. Again, this is like an after school program, so it'll be 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. There will be a bus system that will take students from school to the facility and then back home or back to the school where a parent or guardian could pick them up. This focuses more on the ages between 11 and 17. And then for the needs assessment, again, like 11 through 17, any ethnicity, it doesn't matter. The demographic focuses on like middle school, high schoolers in the Maricopa County. Then let's see, for our intervention, an adolescent treatment level is determined by assessing the individual in 6 critical areas of development by the American Society of Addiction Medicine. This will include the severity of intoxication and withdrawal, current and past medical conditions, mental health conditions, including emotional, behavioral, and cognitive conditions, youth readiness to change his or her substance use behavior, and then also to focus on the living situation of that student, so their family, friends, anyone close to them. The program will go 5 days a week and focuses on building self-esteem and improving decision-making. This helps with the latchkey children to find an alternative to drugs and alcohol who are able to get the help and support that they need. Discuss the importance of proper measurement, varying activity or session type with its benefits, educating parents to help facilitate a healthier environment and healthy relationship with their child. And then moving on to the flowchart and organizational chart. So basically how Say No will work is that a student will either be there voluntarily, referred to by the school, or through court referral. They can get transportation via bus, or if they want a parent or guardian to drop them off. There will be random interval drug testing throughout the program. The duration of the program is dependent on the therapist's evaluation or the court mandate. So they will see a therapist as soon as they get in, and they will assess what they need. There will be one-on-one counseling sessions and self-esteem building sessions. Also, there will be a pre and post test to see how far the student has come. And then for the organizational chart, there will be many people that work in this facility and are there to help the children and help the adolescents. There will be a CEO who oversees everything, and then a medical director, program manager, and then there'll be also like finance coordinator, operations coordinator, there will be a first aid person there, there will be volunteers, and then certified counselors as well. For our budget, it'll be just over like about $3 million. So that'll include all the budgets for the staff, including the bus drivers. And then also that will include the utilities, the building, the gas for the buses, any maintenance that may be needed for the buses, supplies like computers, pencils, chairs, desks, anything like that. And then our evaluation plan is quantitative and qualitative. So that would be so the hypothesis is for the program to help students and help adolescents gain a healthy relationship with their friends and family and stay away from drugs and alcohol, learn how to say no and to maintain their healthy living. They want to assess that the students are willing and able to do their homework, have higher self-esteem, because studies have shown that low self-esteem may result in the misuse of drugs. So that is really important for this program. And yeah, I think that's it. So if you have any questions.
Great job, Emily. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, then we'll move on to a presentation by our next group.
Good afternoon. My name is Mili Ibarra, and this is our program, Bella Dia. Bella Dia's mission is to provide the homeless women of the Phoenix metropolitan area with the support, services, and safety they need in order to transition from the streets into stable living so they may have more beautiful days. As a part of our resources and input operations, we have 5 shelter workers who live in the shelter, 2 managers, 1 mentor coordinator, and 10 to 15 volunteer mentors under them, 5 support group leaders, experts and sober coaches, 2 janitorial staff, 1 head of the kitchen, 1 financial director, and 1 clinic that we've partnered up with. We also offer 65 beds, 1 facility, food, parenting materials such as diapers, wipes, formula, bottles, baby clothes, and bedding and extra clothing in all sizes. The processes that are a part of the Bella Dia program are physical and mental health evaluations upon intake and release, weekly support groups for substance abuse, domestic violence, motherhood and parenting, and workshops on professionalism and financial literacy. Clients are also to volunteer twice a week in our kitchen. And lastly, we have also created a mentor system where past women who have been our clients volunteer to be a support system for the new women coming in. Taking all this into consideration, our output operations include 2 physical and mental health evaluations per client upon intake and release, 2 meetings between clients and assigned mentors per week, 2 sessions of each support group and workshop conducted per week, and nightly dinners Monday through Friday. We expect for our clients to build the professional skills and resumes so that they may have a higher chance of securing a job and stable income. If at the end of the 90-day program, clients have not met that goal, they may reapply for a 30-day extension. Our main goals are to help women find affordable and stable living, get jobs, help new mothers, help them get sober, and be a safe haven for domestic abuse. Ultimately, we want to provide a safe and comfortable environment for homeless women seeking shelter while actively working towards reducing the number of homeless women within the Phoenix metropolitan area. When conducting our needs assessment, we wanted to look through not only our eyes, through our agency's eyes, but also through the eyes of our clients and community. So level 1 of our needs assessment, we determined that we would be providing services to an estimate of 65 people, that's 50 women and 15 children for housing, as well as 200 women and their children for nightly meals Monday through Friday. The demographic description of our target population is homeless women at least age 15 and up, as well as their children 10 years of age and under from the Phoenix metropolitan area. For level 2 of our needs assessment, we recognized various barriers to our clients receiving our services. These barriers include how to get individuals to come in and know what our program is all about, and how to earn the trust of our target population. Other barriers included locating and securing housing in the downtown Phoenix area and providing free or affordable transportation for our clients.
And based on that, we decided to look into our best practices. So we saw that 27% of homelessness is due to substance abuse, and then 30% of single homeless women have a child. So it is important to have this shelter be in place. This study was created to help, the study with Hellberg and Hart was created to help services and target a certain need for such mental health services, affordable living, substance abuse treatment, and aid for victims of homelessness, jobs, and create training. That's basically Bella Dia's goal. So we found that having support groups and overall mentors really increased self-esteem as well as overall well-being. The goal was really to create a strong community where women empower women. So clients that successfully complete the 90 days in our home find their way to affordable living and have the opportunity to continue to attend our support groups and even become a mentor for incoming clients. So it's really is that like community helping community based. So looking at our flowchart and our organization chart, our flowchart begins with pamphlets being given out to other homeless shelters, trying to just to get to the word out of Bella Dia. Once they are admitted into the program, they get a questionnaire. If they, for some reason, are declined, we push them towards resources and services that will help them out. But if they are welcomed into our program, they are then giving a physical and mental health evaluation through our partners with the free clinic at the Phoenix metropolitan area. It is then that they are evaluated into one of the 4 groups, which is substance abuse, parenting, support groups, as well as professional and financial literacy and domestic abuse. Clients can be in more than one of these groups. Once they were within these groups, throughout the 90 days, they will have 2 meetings with their mentor per month, 6 total, then 1 professional literacy meeting per week, which is 12 total, attending 2 group sessions, 24 total, and then volunteering in the soup kitchen at least 24 times total. It is then that they are to find affordable living after the 90 days. If for some reason they cannot, they can apply for a 30-day extension. If they do not receive that extension, they are pushed to other resources and services. If they do, they stay with us for another 30 days. But if they completely complete our program, they become new members of society, leave the program, and can come back to be a mentor. Now looking into what makes this all possible and our team of people that we have at Bella Dia, it is under 2 management people that have 5 underneath them, and that is the chef, shelter coordinator, mentor coordinator, support group leader, and financial director. All important jobs that we need within our shelter. Under the chef, we have 9 volunteers that will work every day with our chef. Under shelter coordinators, we have 5 stay-at-home employees that will be there 24/7 within the shelter, and 2 janitorial staff. Mentor coordinators really coordinate all the mentors that we have, all the clients, past clients that we've had, and volunteers. Our support group leader really just houses our support group members, and that includes the substance abuse, domestic violence, parenting, financial literacy. Going on to our budget, we do want to pay our team very well. So for that, their salaries come up to around $3.8 million. But this also includes part-time salaries as well as full-time salaries and live-in people. Moving on to our operational costs, we did find a building within the Phoenix metropolitan area that wasn't an apartment complex, and that would house all of our clients as well as give office space for our employees. And that will be $4.5 million. Utility bills and maintenance, that all comes up to a total of around $4.6 million. Moving on to our supplies, this is a shelter for women and children, so we really want to make sure that we have maternity materials as well as feminine hygiene, really important. Grocery costs, beds, computers, office supplies, landlines, internet, toiletries, beddings, and extra clothing, all bringing our grand total up to $3.4 million. I mean, $8.4 million.
Lastly, I'll be presenting our evaluation plan. In order to determine the impact of Bella Dia's program on the lives of our clients, we decided to collect quantitative and qualitative data. The research question of our quantitative analysis is Bella Dia an effective transition program for the homeless women of the Phoenix metropolitan area? Our dependent variable is the amount of homeless women of the Phoenix metro area who successfully transition from homelessness to affordable, stable, and secure living. As our clients conclude our 90-day program, we will be keeping track of these numbers of those who have transitioned. We hypothesize that the population of homeless women in the Phoenix metropolitan area will decrease due to the 90-day program provided by Bella Dia. The overall design of this quantitative analysis is an experimental research design. And in order to analyze this data, we will compare the relationship between the independent variables, which are our services, our housing, our support groups, with our dependent variables, which are the client transitioning to a stable living. Lastly, for our qualitative analysis, our research question is, does Bella Dia provide the appropriate and necessary services and interventions in order to assist the homeless women of the Phoenix metropolitan area in transitioning from homelessness to stable and secure living? Our intent for this analysis is to observe the progress each client has made on their path from homelessness to stable and secure living. It is also to observe any changes in the physical and psychological health of our clients throughout our program. Lastly, we also want the opinion of our clients themselves when it comes to discerning the effectiveness of Bella Dia. We will collect this data primarily through our clients' weekly meetings with their assigned mentors. During these meetings, the mentors will touch base with their clients on the progress they have made towards stable living since joining the program. Topics like finding a job or an affordable home will be discussed during these meetings, as well as the obstacles in the way of that. The mentor will also provide the client with a weekly survey in which Bea Dia's program is evaluated by them. Clients will also be physically and psychologically evaluated upon their intake into the 90-day Bea Dia program, as well as towards the end of the program in order to document any changes. Intake, physical and psychological examinations, and discharge physical and psychological evaluations will be directly compared to one another to observe any changes or improvements. Weekly collection of the client's progress towards transitioning into affordable, stable, and secure living will also be analyzed. And lastly, mentors will conduct and collect surveys from our clients every week. Based on their evaluation of Bea Dia's program, we will adjust our services accordingly. And that's it for our presentation. Thank you all so much for your time, and we open the floor to any questions and comments.
Thank you, Paula. And Millie, any questions? Okay, then we will move on to our next presentation. Alan, you are up.
Hi, my name is Alondie Clay. I am from the White Mountain Apache Reservation, and I currently reside on the Fort Apache Indian Reservation. And Apaches thrive on passing down our traditions and values. There are so many beautiful traditions that distinguish us from others, but there is one that has been passed down for centuries that we were unaware of, or it has become a social norm and we were unaware of the consequences of it. So you could be wondering, like, what tradition have we passed down that is so heinous to even think about considering it? And it is, after all, drugs and alcohol. That is a huge problem in of itself. But if we dig deeper, we discover that suicide is a larger concern among our younger community members. And that is where Prevention Nation, my program, comes in. And for my mission statement for Prevention Nation is to raise awareness among the White Mountain Apache youth and how drugs and alcohol can lead to a suicide. Drug and alcohol addiction, especially among youth, is a major problem on the White Mountain Apache Reservation that everyone is aware of, but the bigger issue is, of course, always leads to suicide. And the resource input on my logic model is that it'll be at the Apache Behavioral Health Services with at least 3 peer mentors. And I was thinking that we would offer sort of like after school activities, and because when I was in high school, they had something similar to this, but it involved like outdoor activities like basketball, volleyball, and pretty much anything you could do outdoor, which was nice because I quite enjoy that. But I was thinking about, what about those who don't really like the outdoors? And I was thinking of video games, like activities that involve video games, skateboarding, anything that just reaches any part of the adolescent's interests. And upon further research, I used to work with the White Mountain Apache Police Department, and while I was talking to the chief about this program, he mentioned that they produce a file about every month about how many suicide attempts there are among adolescents, and there is at least 1 per month, which is a lot, given that it is a small reservation, because there is about 17,000 people who reside here, and 69% are under the age of 25, have attempted suicide. 73% of them were using some sort of substance. And however, the highest incident reports still remain between the ages of 15 and 19 years old. But I do want to impact, or let's go to my needs assessment, because it kind of goes more into that. So The estimated number of people who could receive services in the White Mountain Apache Reservation is at least 69% of the White Mountain Apache tribe. And it goes to both males and females between the ages of 12 and 17. I figured even though that the highest incidence reports still are between 15 and 19, trying to get awareness, trying to spread awareness of how suicide or how drugs and alcohol can impact or lead to suicide. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. It would be better to kind of like go into junior high area. And even though I am a member of the White Mountain Apache tribe, I couldn't exclude any barriers that I would run across. So I interviewed 2 people who I thought would have an idea of what I could run into. And the first person I interviewed was the Chief Judge Hastings. She thinks that the main barrier would be the support system. The family structure is not there, and the children are basically on their own because they are 4th generation of abuse. And even their parents could be users, and they would think that drugs and alcohol is normal. And I also interviewed a CPS intake specialist. Her name is Linnea Walker. She thinks another barrier is that parents would rather go through the traditional route and like not having the belief system in any medical or anything. They would rather do it in a traditional sense. And so those are the barriers that I could possibly run into. And moving on to my intervention, I was thinking more of like enhancing the course, because when I was reading an article, they suggested that the school is an important way to meet adolescents as well as to train gatekeepers. This helps gatekeepers to identify and respond to at-risk students, and it is an important priority for suicide prevention. The first comprehensive understanding of the the efficiency of school-based gatekeeping program is improving gatekeeper-related outcomes presented in this report. And the intervention that the agency will use is a peer system support, which can be done in or out of school, or are intended to help high-risk youth and young adults develop peer relationships and social skills, and also offer training for school facilitators. This form of program aims to assist school personnel, such as teachers, counselors, and coaches, in identifying and referring students who are at risk of suicide. These services also teach workers how to deal with suicide and other related crises. And moving on to my flowchart, how this program is developed is I will get referrals from the police department or from the schools, and they would get in contact. I would get in contact with the parent to make sure I have their permission, and then they would be sent to the Apache Behavioral Health, and I would participate for their evaluation. Once complete evaluation, then they will start their peer mentor, meet with the peer mentor, and then keep going and include after school activities and working on raising awareness of it. So with the budget, it would become about like 1 million. And within that, the director, group director, child, adolescent, and family clinician, intake clinician, receptionist, and volunteer coordinator are all included in the salary and budget, as well as the building room rent, electricity bill, and maintenance. And the supplies include the computers and printers and printer supplies, of course. And I forgot to update my poster and provide the evaluation plan, but my evaluation plan includes the quantitative outcome evaluation. And my research question is, does Prevention Nation offer the knowledge and support it needs to help reduce the suicide rates among the White Mountain Apache youth? And the dependent variable is how many referrals we would get from the officers, the schools on the reservation, and from IHS Social Service. The hypothesis is adolescents who participate in Prevention Nation's initiative have a lower risk of trying drugs and alcohol, as well as a lower risk of suicide. And the overall design is based on pre-test and post-test non-equivalent control group participants of both groups will be measured before and after they completed the project. And the analysis techniques, the collected data will be analyzed using a t-test, which is statistical test for comparing the means of two groups. And that is all I have for my presentation. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this thoughtful presentation on an important topic. Do we have any questions? Okay, so we will move to our last presentation. Emer and Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Emer, and my partner that's presenting with me is Kirsten, and our project is Wellbeing for Kids. And our mission statement is that the mission of Wellbeing for Kids is to hear and acknowledge children's struggles with food and body weight by promoting well-being and healthy lifestyle habits. This agency will be present within the 4 elementary schools within the Catalina Foothills School District here in Tucson. It will be an after-school program all school year round and will occur twice a school week. The activities will include group counseling and nutrition rehabilitation, educational activities, and playground exercise. We estimate it'll be around 40 kids a week per school, but we will retrieve these accurate numbers through sending out flyers to parents at the beginning of the school year. Our goals consist of that parents will know what symptoms of under and overeating to look out for, and that children will be able to discuss negative feelings about undereating or binging food, as well as issues with body weight in an open manner, and also to inspire a generation of children to speak positively about their bodies and build resilience towards societal standards. We do want to work to include the parents as much as possible in this process.
So moving on to our needs assessment, the estimated number of people who can receive our service is about like 100 children per elementary school within the CFSD school district, which is about 400 children in total. And our target is elementary school age children because that is where we see the biggest problems with eating. And any gender, sex, age, ethnicity is welcome because eating disorders can affect anyone. So just at our little graph here, we see that 42% of first through third grade girls want to be thinner, 81% of 10-year-old children are afraid of being fat, and 46% of 9 to 11-year-olds are sometimes or very often on diets. So yeah, that is our needs assessment.
And moving on to our evidence-based practice, we were focusing on the family-based therapy, which is a great evidence-based practice because it is a family-based intervention for children. There are typically 3 phases within family-based therapy. Therapists will help parents understand how to make sure their child is properly eating. The child is gradually given the responsibility of managing their own eating, and therapy focuses on child development and how eating disorders may prevent some areas of growth. Family-based treatments are highly valued by therapists because of the success rate. We also chose to include individual therapy because not all parents will be able to be involved in the child's program. But child's parents may be unable to take time out of the school quarter to check in with our representatives on their child's progress, but individual therapy is great to target the self-efficacy and autonomy of childhood development.
Okay, so moving on to the flow chart. Our plan was to start out by sending flyers to families at the beginning of the school year for our after school program information and parent volunteer opportunities, because volunteers are always welcome. And there's no referrals necessary for that, just parental concern in child's health and interest by joining the club is needed. And so from there, we'd move to online survey for parents and children just about their habits and patterns. And then from there, we'd choose what groups to put the children into. So family-based therapy would be more of our parental involvement with the treatment. And then the individual therapy would be no parental involvement at all, because we want to target the self-efficacy in childhood development. And then family-based therapy would be the group activities would be like organized play and just simple cooking classes, which can focus on just like appropriate portion sizes and not overeating. And exercise that focuses not on over-exercising. And then our individual therapy, the group activities would look like kind of the same: organized play, simple cooking classes, healthy exercise, and a focus on just resolving any underlying problems. And then from there, we would want children to age out, or they would want to leave the program, or they would need to seek further help. And then our organization chart. So we would have a CEO, under that a director, and then we would have our 4 nutritionists, because we'll have 1 per school, a program director, which is a total for a volunteer coordinator, which would just be in charge of really like overseeing everything that day, and then the financial advisor. And so just under the program director, we have program manager and program coordinator and administrative assistant and counselors. And then volunteer coordinator, we would have 4 volunteers so per school, so it'd be a total of 16. And then our budget plan, so again, 8 counselors, 4 nutritionists, volunteers. They would be all no benefits, part-time, so they would be under service personnel, so the subtotal would be around $240,000. And then administrative personnel would be like the CEO, director, financial advisor, administrative assistant, all of that. And we included the benefits in there, so the total for that would be around $730,000. And then for infrastructure, for our the program will be held at the school, so it would be a free space, but the renting, we would want to rent a building space for the organization in itself. So we included just a little budget on that, which would, the yearly total would be around $33,000. And then for computers and all that stuff for counselors and a computer system, $22,000. And then supplies would be $800 a year, because we want crayons and markers and the cooking classes. We would do about like once a month over the 8-month school year period, and then playground equipment and all that stuff. So a total would be about 1 million. And so it would be held right after school, so there would be no transportation needed.
And for our evaluation plan, our research question for our quantitative outcome evaluation is: what are the rates of healthier eating habits and image issues after partaking in this after-school program, as opposed to children who do not seek help? Our outcome measure would be the number of disordered eating rates and negative body image rates compared to students who do not partake in the after-school program within that same elementary school. Our hopes for the design is that there'll be pre-tests and post-tests to accurately measure the statistics of children with food-related issues within the Catalina Foothills School District. And for our qualitative analysis, our research question is: how do these elementary school children improve their healthy eating habits, and how do they feel about their disordered eating and/or body image issues? The intent of the analysis would be to understand if the children are utilizing skills learned in the program and continuing to healthily eat and view their body with grace instead of insecurity. Our analysis techniques would be, the results would be reported through nutritionists, along with surveys to our clients and the parents of the clients on what we would need to improve or change. And we would be receiving this information through surveys, and it would be overseen and reviewed by our counselors and nutritionists that we have within Wellbeing for Kids. So that is our presentation. Thank you so much. If you guys have any questions, free to answer them.
Well done, all of you. Yeah, I know we're over time, but thank you 408 presenters. Great job, all of you.
Yes, thank you everyone who presented today. And I know we've run over time, so we've lost some of our audience, but we appreciate you all coming. I'm feeling inspired by all of the work that we've heard about today. And I want to just take a moment to specifically acknowledge and say a huge thank you to Ali Sosi-Harvey, the FMI program coordinator, who organized this and made this event possible. And I know many of you were emailing multiple times with her. So thank you to Ali, and really terrific work by everyone. Like I said, I feel inspired. This is just a great way to end the semester and to end the week. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you virtually or in person next year. This is our last event for the semester. Take care, everyone.